Right, Greg Wallace, thoughts?
Well, I, like everybody, have been concerned to read the allegations. I think those who've come forward have been very brave to do so. They need to be looked at properly, as you'd expect. And then I think what we saw over the weekend, I thought was quite surprising. And, you know, the individual should want to engage with the case and do that properly. And I'm not sure that was really helpful.
I'm not going to let you dodge it so easily, Mr. Norris. What do you think of middle-class women of a certain age?
I've got nothing but respect for them. You know, I think they make Britain. I think they're part of Britain in all of our industries and lives. And I think any sort of sweeping generalisation like that about people is generally a bad idea.
Would you pick a fight with them?
No, I generally don't pick fights with people. I like working with people.
Especially middle-class women of a certain age.
Well, again, I wouldn't draw a line particularly with them or someone else, to be honest.
OK, what's your view on the Elgin marbles? Should we give them back?
Well, you finished the previous segment by saying talking is always good. We will always talk with the Greek government. The law is clear. The 2028-2 Act is clear. And those conversations, I'm sure, happen routinely. I don't have a strong view either way, but I know that they're the British Museum, and I like to visit them when they're there.
OK. What's your plan to speed up the removal of unsafe cladding on buildings?
I think viewers will be surprised that 7.5 years after one of the worst tragedies in our country's history, which exposed that many people are living with dangerous cladding on their building, not only is only 30% of the known building, or 30% of the known buildings remediated, we don't know half of them. So the government today in Parliament will be launching a plan to rapidly accelerate identification, and on those buildings we know about, rapidly accelerate the remediation of them. And, you know, I think that's the right thing to be doing.
What penalties will the owners of these buildings face if they don't meet the targets that you're setting?
Well, I mean, first of all, we'd like this to be without penalties. Building owners have a responsibility.
As you said, 7.5 years.
7.5 years. It's not been good enough. There's been a lack of focus centrally. It says a lot about the previous government. They couldn't even tell the next government how many buildings needed remediating. So we have a range of powers already, ranging from fines to criminal penalties to prison sentences that can be used in health and safety cases. We will use that basket of tools in whatever way with each building to get it resolved. We've committed that that will be the case by the end of this decade. I wouldn't want to prescribe it in any specific case it's a particular tool, but I would want people who own buildings that are watching this, who have not been remediating them, to know we're after them, and we will want those buildings remediated, and if they don't, they will feel the force of the law.
Will you send them to jail?
Well, again, those are things that happen in cases.
You're not ruling it out, then?
Well, I'm not ruling anything out. We have drawn a line very clearly in the sand, or we will do later in Parliament, to say that by the end of this decade, those buildings will be remediated, and we will do what it takes for that to happen.
And what about local authorities? Will they face the same penalties if they don't reach the targets that you're planning?
Social landlords have to deliver. They similarly, only half of buildings that are owned by social landlords have been remediated. They've raised hurdles with me, like developers have when I've met with them recently. We'll bring further plans forward in the spring, but they too have to deliver on their promises.
Targets can be tricky, though, can't they? And when people are focusing on targets, they ignore or potentially ignore other matters. I'm referring, of course, to NHS bosses in the papers this morning suggesting that vital services will be cut back and A&E services could become, in their words, war zones in order to hit government targets about operations and bringing down the waiting list.
Well, of course, targets have to be good and the right ones. In the case of remediation, just to finish there, if we left things as they were, the current trajectory is that this will be resolved in the 2040s. So that's why we're setting a very rigorous target to bring that forward. With regards to the NHS, we know that that is a fine balance for decision makers locally around how to spend their resource. We have backed the NHS at the previous budget, and rightly, the Health Secretary said that comes with an expectation of delivery. We've got record waiting lists. We've got, obviously, the public. I see this in my constituency mailbag, not happy. They need to deliver on those targets, and it's perhaps not either or.
At the cost of A&E?
No, again, we don't accept that characterisation. Of course, we're having those conversations locally with NHS leaders, but the plan that we've got and the investment we've got, we think is perfectly compatible with delivering that. OK,
what about funnelling, again, a suggestion that money should be funnelled away from mental health services in order to reach those routine operation targets?
Whose suggestion is that, Kay?
That's a very good question, and I can tell you that it was GPs, dentistry, A&E departments, multiple sources, that the NHS England had singled out promises on mental health as a potential casualty as Starmer's promise.
Well, that's not a characterisation I would recognise. That's not something ministers have said. You know, for a long time in this country, we've talked about the importance of parity of esteem between physical and mental health. I think some of the delivery on that has lagged, but again, that's why the Health Secretary's been so keen to put his energies into mental health. So no, we don't see those things in competition.
Okay, so you don't think that NHS England would single out promises on mental health as a potential casualty?
Well, I'm not. Background sources and leaders coming out and saying it, I think, are two different things. And if they have those issues, I know that that ministers will very much listen to them and work with them on. But as I say, that's not something we would accept.
Just remind me, you supported pensioners having their 300 quid taken off them?
Yes, I voted for that.
Okay,
yes.
so did Liz Kendall, of course. And it's appeared over the weekend that the woman that is responsible for taking that money off 10 million pensioners is claiming up to £350 a month on energy bills for her second home.
Well, okay, I don't know if you worked away before, but like members of Parliament...
I've never asked the government to pay for my energy bills, and I've certainly never taken 300 quid off pensioners.
No, but your employer would meet the costs of living and staying away from home if you needed to.
My employer doesn't get their money off the tax of other people.
But again, anybody in any walk of life would expect that if they had to work away for home, the cost of doing that would be met. I, like Liz, all MPs...
Doesn't have to take the money. She's very wealthy. Well, certainly the family are very wealthy in their own right.
That's not something I would know about personally, but I can talk for myself in that I pay my energy bills at home as viewers do. When I work away, as viewers do, that's met by my employer. That's set independently by the independent Parliament.
Make you feel a little bit queasy, though, that pensioners are not getting that money?
No, we've been very clear that we want those pensioners who need it to access pension credit, and I know that lots of my constituents have been applying for it and doing so. Those who perhaps fall over the cliff edge can access the hardship support fund. You know, we were left a huge hole in the public's finances. We weren't expecting to be doing this at the outset, but it was the right decision taken for the nation and the nation's finances.
Based on your own figures, suggesting 100,000 pensioners might be forced into poverty because of this.
Well, again, I would say to anybody concerned about themselves or a loved one, apply for pension credit. And if you don't...
That's really easy for a pensioner in their 70s or 80s, isn't it?
No,
filling in loads of forms.
But again, having talked to pensioners in my constituency who've phoned the DWP, they've been given loads of support. So again, I wouldn't want people to get a message that it's too hard for them to do, because it's not. And the concern that comes to me a lot... Well, no, but
you're a middle-aged man of a certain age.
Well,
Middle-class man, I should say.
Well, perhaps today, yes, not always, Kate. But...
OK, well, cold weather is forecast this week. What advice would you give to those pensioners?
Well, as you know, in cold weather cases, a cold weather payment can kick in if we get to that stage. As I say, please finish your application on pension credit. If you do not fall into that category and you're just above a cliff edge, contact your council, because they've been given a hardship support fund, lots of money around the country for them to smooth those edges off. Contact them, and you'll be given support if you need it.
Are you going to watch the MasterChef Christmas specials?
I haven't watched MasterChef in a very, very long time. I'm not sure I ever did through choice, but that's just me.
Is that a yes or a no?
No, I won't be.